Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Cohn. I manage live programming and events for KPCC and LAist. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please forgive my casual attire. It was supposed to be opening day for the Dodgers, so I felt it only appropriate to honor my hometown team, Go LA. I hope that you and yours are doing well and staying safe in our new current reality. KPCC in person has gone virtual, and this is the first of our No Panic Guide live sessions. Thank you again for joining us. The idea here is to be a resource for you. So if you have questions for Jacob, please add them in the comments section in your Facebook Live. At the end of the session, we'll also provide a link to an optional post-event survey. If you have the time, we'd welcome your feedback along with any ideas you may have for other virtual events we could do that would be of interest and value to you. If you haven't already, you can sign up for our in-person and other KPCC and LAS newsletters at the link that I'm sure one of my colleagues is about to add in the comment section. And lastly, your generous support continues to be our primary source of funding in this extraordinary time, and we continue to be grateful for it. If you can, we appreciate that ongoing support. Thank you. So today, it's all about you. Share your questions with us. We'll get to as many as we can and try to follow up on the ones that we don't get to. Without further ado, KPCC science reporter and resident supply chain guru, Jacob Margolis.
Hey everyone, how's it going? No one's going to respond, I guess, in terms of voice. So thanks for taking the time to join us today. I am normally the science reporter who reports on climate change, earthquakes, things like that. And this time around, I'm looking at the supply chain. So I've been digging deep into it to understand where stuff is stuck, so that I could understand what all this panic buying impacted and basically when things are going to get back to normal. I've been looking into everything from medicine to toilet paper to beans, a lot of ag stuff, even calling people just about, I guess, even antibiotics out of China. If you have questions, drop them in the stream, and our wonderful producers will put them in a document for me to see, and I can go ahead and comment on them. But let's kick this off with Nina Gregory's question, and she wants to know how Harry's Berries and other local farms are addressing this for people who are picking the produce. That's a really good question. And so I've spent a lot of time on the phone the past week with different growers, packagers, people that are absolutely crucial to getting fresh food on our plates. And this is a major concern. There are frequently, a lot of people of different companies have said that they are providing additional protective equipment. But the truth is, for a lot of these workers who are undocumented, who might be undocumented or who work very closely in these factories, they might not have health care that they can turn to, so they might end up working sick. It's a really big threat to them. And right now, it's sort of agricultural kind of downtime right before a huge flush of picking and moving and a lot of stuff, because spring is basically here. There are concerns when it comes to getting the produce off the field. So strawberries are one thing that need to be picked very quickly. They can go bad if, say, they get hit by major rains or something. They just spoil pretty easily. And so some of these farms that need workers that are already dealing with a worker shortage because of visa issues might not be able to get them, and stuff might go fallow in the fields. And so, yeah, it's a really big concern, and we're going to see kind of how that plays out probably over the next couple months. I'm going to guess that a lot of people are just not going to have protections, period, and are really going to struggle and are going to suffer. And that's really sad. Okay, so next question is Marjo wants to know where to buy hand sanitizer and masks. They say, I'm not planning on hoarding. My work requires me to show up, and I still have no choice but to be in public spaces. There's some hand sanitizer left. They've been using dust masks, which are not really effective, but they make them feel better on the bus. It's a really good question, and I think that stuff's going to be out for a long time. I don't think there are a whole lot of wonderful narratives, options besides the potential sewing your own, which are not as effective and would definitely not be used in medical situations if that wasn't absolutely necessary. It's really scary. The good news for hand sanitizer is that soap is actually more effective. And so if you can get to soap, maybe there's a bathroom that you can use at work. I assume there is. And I hope they provide soap. If they don't, let us know because we're curious what company that would be. You can wash your hands, and it doesn't feel as good as carrying around hand sanitizer and kind of squirting it all the time. It provides some level of safety net, and kind of emotionally and actually, obviously, a germ safety net. But it's just really tough right now. There are stories coming out of New York, and there are stories in California too of medical professionals running out of these supplies, especially masks, and reusing masks, and that's really scary as well. So I don't know when that stuff will be back in. There's some big national stories following that right now, and it's a lot of up and downs, especially for medical professionals. But a lot of companies are sitting on emergency stock, strangely enough. Like Apple had a ton of N95 masks, and I have no clue why. I mean, maybe because of wildfires up there. I don't really know. All right, Jerry Tan, and I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's names. Do you have any idea why people are panic buying? I cannot figure out why. If people are not in that state of mind, I don't see any reason for fear of any shortages. That's true right now. I don't know. There might have been a stress on the mask supply for all I know, if it was just medical, all hands on deck, medical workers needing those masks. But as far as toilet paper goes, as far as Tylenol goes, as far as all the produce in the fields, beans, rice, all of that stuff, if people were not panic buying and buying large amounts, this wouldn't be as much of an issue. I mean, plain and simple. But I also understand why people are doing it. We put out a guide. I wrote a guide and told people to go prep because that's what we do for earthquakes. And I'm not saying I had that much of an influence, but people went and bought a lot of stuff. And we went out and bought some stuff for our house because I worried about panic buying. So it was kind of kind of fed on itself. It will stabilize as people stop buying as much stuff in stores. I mean, people are buying hundreds of pounds of beans, and I love beans. I eat beans all the time. I mean, I can't go through hundreds of pounds in like a couple months, maybe a year. I don't know. That'd be a lot of bean burgers. But yeah, don't panic buy. But hopefully stuff will come back into stores soon. Goya told me that it would be a couple weeks probably before things stabilize with beans, assuming there's no additional panic and freak out. All right, so we have Carolyn. What is recommended after buying groceries, meds, etc. at local stores? If contagious people handle items while loading their shopping carts, and then the cashier, gloved or not, bags their groceries, couldn't they then transfer viruses to my items? Do I sanitize each can of beans at home? The answer is yes. Virus can live on certain surfaces. I think it's plastic and metal for up to 3 days in some circumstances. I think cardboard right now, it's believed to be 24 hours. What we've been doing with our groceries is we kind of have an internal quarantine zone in our place. We're fortunate enough to have a garage. We live in the San Fernando Valley, so I guess we have somewhere to park our cars that have to take us all over the place because the valley, has terrible public transit. And we leave them there for 3 days just to be extra safe. So if you can do that, that's great. If you can't, then yes, you can wipe things down. You can use sprays that you've bought, alcohol solutions, bleach solutions, soap and water, and you can wash them down. And if it's something that can't get wet, I mean, you might have to, I think the chance of transferring on packages, as far as I know, is not high. And I don't know if we've actually tracked, I don't know if anybody's actually seen that happen and documented that in like a scientific paper at this point, but it is theoretically a possibility. So you could be careful, put it aside for a period of time if that makes you feel better. And it makes us feel better. We have 2 little kids at home, and we're doing our best, but everyone's just we're doing our best. So feel good about your best, please. Okay. Christina Amen. Where and how is the best way to get toilet paper, paper towels, and disinfectant wipes? You're going to have to wait till stuff comes back in stock. I'm sorry. Like toilet paper is really interesting because it's so bulky and light. It takes up a lot of space and it's not worth that much money. And so majority of toilet paper is produced locally, and those local facilities never really deal with a surge in demand. Like toilet paper is pretty, we don't have usually something like this where all of a sudden a bunch of people need to use the restroom a lot and toilet paper is required. And so they're still trying to catch up with people having bought 2 years worth of supply. They don't have that much that big of an ability to expand that much. So you're just going to have to wait. Same thing, I imagine, with paper towels, disinfectant wipes. If I could request that people stop buying baby wipes, because people with babies don't have baby wipes right now in a lot of cases, or are having trouble finding them. I know we did recently. I think we were able to get a shipment for sometime in April. The baby wipes are not disinfectant wipes. In what you can do for all of these items that I've been trying to do is go directly to suppliers if possible. So my wife, as a comfort thing, really wanted cheese. So I went directly to the dairy. I found them online. They happened to sell it directly. And I bought her some cheese and got around supermarkets. And there's always a chance that our supply chain, I guess like Amazon won't be able to deliver, UPS, FedEx. But as far as I know right now, things are kind of sailing along, but everybody's having a hard time. So, okay. Sid Towers. I'm in the e-commerce business selling beef, and we noticed an uptick in online sales in the last 2 weeks, but this week feels more like a normal week. I wonder if brick and mortar stores are noticing this as well. I've heard from other people. I talked to someone who lives out in, I think he lives in Valencia, and he was saying his supermarkets were fine, the ones near him. We here in LA, I mean, all the markets around me, I live in, like I said, the San Fernando Valley, Vallarta, Ralph's, Sprouts, Whole Foods, Vaughn's, CVS, Target, everything is like cleaned out. And it might be because we have a lot of people here and a lot of people, Trader Joe's too. And maybe it's the places that have more people right now that obviously it makes sense that stuff would fly off the shelves a lot faster. I've heard from a number of people that in the business, Sid, that they expected stuff to stabilize in the coming weeks as people kind of realized their safety supply was built up. Another online store that I follow that I've been watching that sells kind of wholesale to consumers that have like 50-pound bags of beans, 2,000-pound totes of beans. Their stuff has been coming back in stock, and they've got a lot of it because they list how much they have on their site. So they're seeing that as well. But it's a good time. Sounds like it's a good time to be in the meat business, probably beef business, right? Okay, Rachel Burke. When will sanitizing products, so Lysol wipes, be available for online delivery? It just whenever they catch up. Like I've contacted a number of different suppliers, and I get very generic answers. And they say we're working our hardest and we've ramped up supply. No one. The one thing that I haven't been able to figure out yet, because it's very complicated, but that Willie Shee over at Harvard told me, was that there was a big buildup of supplies here, like raw materials here ahead of, I guess, Chinese New Year back in January. That was sort of extended into February. That is generally a time that for which a lot of suppliers here prepare, because they know there's going to be a lot of downtime in that supply chain from China. Right now, what we're seeing, he said, is a lot of people that manufacture still have a lot of that stuff on hand, but that through this month have probably run through it. And we heard from the Port of LA today that their shipments from China have dropped by about 50%. So all this to say, if your wipes do depend on something from China, there is a chance that possibly they're waiting for more materials to come in. I don't know. Like I said, I reached out to different manufacturers, or like places like Target. I reached out to Honest Company for some baby stuff, and either didn't get a response back or got a very generic response, like we're trying our hardest. All right. Painkillers and the manufacturing in China of painkillers. This was something that so there's a question about medicines. I'm assuming this is this says painkillers and manufacturing in China. I'm going to throw India into there too. And I'm going to also say pharmaceuticals across the board, anything that's prescribed. A lot of manufacturing comes out of China. The vast majority of our antibiotics apparently come from Inner Mongolia, which is really interesting. I reached out regarding some different economists and supply chain experts who follow, especially generics coming out of India. I asked Tylenol, the makers of Tylenol, if they've seen any sort of shortage in the raw material that they need to make their pills. No one has indicated that yet. I also reached out to the FDA. They track that sort of thing, just know if there is going to be a hitch in the supply chain in terms of medicine. They have not gotten back either. However, as soon as they do, I'll tweet it out. We'll write an article on LAist about it, and hopefully we'll have a log of all the stuff that is delayed. I don't think people know yet. I think people are running through supplies at this point, and when the panic buying slows down, those supplies will last a little longer. But you're seeing runs on some very critical pharmaceuticals because people think they might work for coronavirus, and I feel terrible for the people that need to take those because it looks like doctors are stockpiling for themselves and their family and friends and stuff, or very wealthy clients, and that is sad. All right, David G. Marks. So if we see desired product on the shelves, TP, paper towel, sanitizer, should we share that with our networks? Or would that amp up the panic rush? It's up to you. It's up to you. I mean, I have offered different colleagues some different stuff that we have purchased. If people really need it, I mean, maybe you could buy it and then donate it. Maybe some doctors. You said toilet paper, paper towels, sanitizers, etc. I bet that doctors, hospitals need some of that stuff right now. TP and paper towels. I'm going to venture to guess that places like, I'm sure we have a whole list of places that you can donate on LAist. And if we could share that in the chat, that'd be great. But you should consider donating because that's something that we've considered because we eat a ton of, I try to eat vegan. I eat a ton of rice and beans, a lot of vegetables. So we buy large amounts of rice and beans anyway. And we've talked about donating some of that to local places. But I know they also have a shortage of labor right now to process like food bank orders and whatnot. So if you want to go volunteer, you can also do that. All right, Marcelo Sawyer, with the announcement of the US now having the most cases, how long do you think before California switches to a mandatory, so punitive criminal stay-at-home order? I don't know. I think that we've taken some of the most aggressive action in the entire nation. And I think that there was a law, part of California public health, like law, that it was really interesting. I looked at this when all this first started happening and Newsom talked about the state of emergency for California. And they can commandeer any hotel or building or whatever to basically install beds and treat people. Health officers can also, basically, it says like commandeer bodies, which means that they can theoretically arrest people or fine people. It'd probably be a fine for going out and do that stuff. I don't know if they could arrest. That'd be really interesting to see in the United States. But I did talk to a former lawyer who wrote some of the pandemic. They have all these how do you say it, like scenarios that they game out for the state of California, and he wrote some of those, and we talked about that. And if you guys are interested in that, I'm happy to share it. I'll tweet it out a little later. So yeah, we're sharing that. So eggs is one thing that came up yesterday when we were talking about this that people were curious about. There has been an enormous demand on eggs, and chickens can only produce so fast. So again, those are going to be delayed until people stop panic buying. I also talked to a farm a couple days ago about, it's called, I don't know if you guys know Dirty Girl Farms up in Santa Cruz. A large portion of their business, like 25 to 50% of their business, is restaurants. And so as soon as all the restaurants shut down, all of a sudden they had nowhere to send all of this food, and they lost a ton of customers. Overnight, I talked to them and they said overnight they've had to pivot to a CSA. And I am wondering if more farms are going to be doing that. And I think there are a lot of farms that have. But when we're talking about the supply chain and understanding why maybe stuff is delayed, we can't get a hold of things. I mean, you have to think of it down to the level of like, there is someone on that farm who has to go pick that strawberry and put it in a box, but they also have to call their box maker and say, I need 1,000 more boxes. Or with beans, one of the interesting things was like on the bean line, they need more of those bags that they stick them in, like the tiny 1 pound bags with logos. And so the bag manufacturer has to get more plastic pellets or whatever they make it out of, or sheeting, and kind of logo that up and make that and then send it off. So there are delays all the way back to kind of that nuance of a level, which I found to be very interesting. And beans in particular was very interesting. All right. Oh, a CSA is community supported agriculture. I'm sorry, there's a little delay between the chat and what I'm saying. So community supported agriculture. So there are some farms, and I was thinking about reaching out to some different folks down here who are growing food that they can basically put together a box and send it to your door, or they do a drop off point and people can come pick it up. And it's stuff that comes directly from the farm. So essentially a farmer's market in a box. And it's been an option for a long time. When I lived in Santa Cruz, it was kind of even a bigger thing, an even bigger thing, because there's a lot of ag up there. But down here we have a decent amount as well. And I could imagine if, say, farmers markets get shut down, which there's no indication that they will be, maybe some of those farmers will have to kind of turn to CSAs. So direct interaction with consumers instead. It's especially important for people who can't go out to stores, people who need to rely on delivery. And so that's potentially a good option. Right. Yeah, Michael, Ashley, Menace. You know what? I'll share. So you want to hear more about the former lawyer and the pandemic scenarios? I was reading through the pandemic. So the state of California basically, and FEMA has these, and some different journalists. I think Politico just had a really good piece about like the scenario that they had gamed out and the Trump administration's response, and sort of compared them. But California has scenarios that they game out so that emergency managers know how to respond. And nothing goes exactly how you plan it, basically. And it just takes a lot. I've had a lot of conversations with emergency managers because we produce the Big One podcast. So the Big One, Your Survival Guide, is all about a major San Andreas earthquake that could come and hit. And one of the things we actually talked about was a medical ship in the port showing up to help, because we'd be cut off from all the supply chains around Los Angeles. And so it's interesting to see this happen. But you have a lot of people behind the scenes right now working really, really hard to get us supplies, to figure out how to streamline some of these supply chains. There's a lot of work going on. I often feel like when I'm just sitting around not really thinking about it, like, why isn't more stuff happening more quickly? There is a lot of stuff happening. We have a lot of people here in Los Angeles, and it's a lot to respond to. And so I'm not defending anyone either way, but it's a lot. And the community and the emergency managers often do a very good job. I see mostly things about community supported agriculture. It's potentially a good option, but the one hitch is that they then have to change their whole business model to basically distribute directly to consumers. And the problem becomes, like, there aren't enough delivery trucks. And the guy I talked to was actually driving his dad's truck. Like, the owner of the farm was driving his dad's truck around to deliver all this stuff. And so there's going to be hitches for people, like, shifting their business model towards that kind of stuff. They got so many orders. He said they had to shut down their store, which I also thought was fascinating. If you guys have any other questions, Esteban Uribe said that some restaurants like Home State and Go Get 'em Tiger are offering pantry items like eggs, flour, milk through delivery apps. Yeah, so through Caviar, I also saw that Botanica over in Silver Lake, and then there's Gorilla Tacos over in downtown LA are kind of putting together some different foods for people to take out. And so if you want to support local restaurants and also get some pretty good food, it's a really good option. I don't know how long they're going to be around to do all of that, and so it'd be good to kind of support them up front. All right, so we're going to start wrapping it up. If you guys have any follow-up questions, please let me know. You can always reach me on Twitter at Jacob Margolis. Although I did see one thing come in from David Marks, and I'll try to answer that first. So how can one help others in the quote unquote outside world if they're quarantined, distancing with someone who's immunocompromised? I think you are doing what you need to do to help the outside world. You're distancing. And I think that you're helping yourself. You're not putting extra stress on the medical system. You're possibly not spreading it to other people, which is really good. And all of this is really hard. It's really hard. I'm sorry we're all going through it. We have a list on LAist of places you could donate if that's what you're talking about. And there's like food banks and things like that that you could totally. There's a lot of people on GoFundMe right now looking for help because social safety nets aren't there to help folks. And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff you could do, like possibly support your local farms, restaurants, maybe donate some money. And yeah, or if there's any other questions, we'd love to answer them. Oh, Trisha Miller Johns is asking if takeout food is safe. You're asking someone who's pretty neurotic about all this, to be honest. Yes, is my understanding. There's been no evidence that there's been spread through takeout food. But when we get it, we basically treat it like raw meat, is essentially how we're thinking about it. So we have gloves that I have for food prep anyway, and take it and cook it. And so I toss it in like a pot, and like we ordered Vietnamese food the other night, and it was different noodle dishes. And so we just tossed it in a pot and cooked it. And that made me feel better. A lot of this is about, if you're already kind of doing all the stuff that the government's recommending and that health experts are recommending, a lot of it's about making yourself feel better too. And if there's stuff you can do to kind of support the world around you and help your mental health, I think that's a really good thing, because this is very mentally difficult. All right. And thank you, David Marks, for the big one is a serious listen, but so good for LA residents. Thank you so much. And thank you, Michael. I really appreciate that. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Cynthia Morris also asks, would I have better luck finding popular food items away from West LA, Pasadena, smaller suburbs? I don't know. If you do, let me know. I don't know. I've only heard anecdotal stuff. We didn't make it to the Korean market near us. We have a lot of vegetables in our garden and stuff, but my understanding is that a lot of Korean, Chinese, the Mexican markets near us are cleared out. So, all right. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, tweet at me if you have any follow-up questions. I'd love answering this stuff at Jacob Margolis. And yeah, I think we're going to hopefully be doing some more of these with some of our other reporters. Let us know if you want like a round table with like a bunch of, I want to do them with a bunch of us too. It's all the producers listening. But it's really fun interacting with you guys. So thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.